morning, everyone, and welcome to the Thursday Forum. Today, fully dedicated to IoT needs and how to address those needs. My name is Julio Pinho, and I'm the head of international sales for Post Telecom. In this journey today, I have two special guests. Mark, as the IoT expert from Cisco. Thank you so much for your presence.
Great to be.
And I have with me as well Goran as the service development manager for Post Technologies. So do not hesitate during our discussion to address your questions through the chat. And I think we should start with an overview. Mark.
Perfect. Well, look, thanks again for inviting me here. It's great to talk to you and your audience. So at Cisco, we have been building an IoT connectivity management platform for more than 15 years. And so together with our friends here at Post and other leading service providers around the world, we have built a platform with more than 220 million connected devices on it. And we're helping together enterprises really manage their IoT deployments at scale to be able to really look after these devices to make sure that they're well protected and everything they need to grow their business. We do this across a huge number of industries, and what we've seen is really that while there are some common components, there's some basic truths at the heart of it. IoT isn't really one type of technology or one type of business. It's really an umbrella that describes all of these different types of businesses that you see here. What they have in common is the need to get data from and control these remote assets. But their businesses are very different in terms of what they have to do out there. One thing also that I found quite interesting over the last couple of years is the fact that while there's a basic use case, which might be what's the value on a smart meter or how many Coke cans are left in the machine, there's usually a basic use case which empowers the business case. But there's often a bigger picture of what happens with the data. And so enterprises really can get a lot of value from using the data from their connected devices to actually predict what's going to happen in the future and really optimize their businesses around that, which is obviously great news for their bottom line and for sustainability in general.
And you see as well that the expected growth by GSMA and by the industry and all the studies that were made, it's still on track? Or you see an acceleration with new technologies or new use cases? How you see the 220 million versus the forecast and versus the future?
So I think the market is still growing in a very healthy way. So growth in cellular IoT is still around the 20% mark, a little bit higher, a little bit lower, depending on the territory and some initiatives. So I think perhaps some of the initial projections in 2010 were a little bit optimistic in a way, but yeah, we see it growing all the time. And as technology moves, particularly as hardware prices come down and as connectivity prices come down in some cases, that it's possible to have use cases connected now that perhaps didn't make so much business sense 10 or 15 years ago.
Okay.
When we look across these, and you can see approximate numbers of some of these customers and these devices that we have on our platform today, you can think of them really in a spectrum. So if you look over towards the right-hand side of the spectrum, we see a highly mobile asset like a connected car that has quite a high degree of sophistication in terms of the technology that it needs, the IT integration, and often these solutions that we see over towards the right need a lot of bandwidth as well on the network, so highly mobile, bandwidth intensive, quite sophisticated solutions.
But Mark, I would say also always connected.
Yeah, exactly. Most of the time that these devices typically want to be connected all the time, there's also a more critical nature to these over on the right-hand side, So we do have some safety critical applications and this kind of critical end of IoT certainly over to the right. And on the opposite end, on the left, then we see devices that in general tend to be less bandwidth intensive. They tend to be sometimes simpler, but in terms of the individual device and its capabilities. And so typically
static as well.
Yeah, exactly. They're less likely to move around. I mean, if my smart meter starts moving around, then I'm probably worried. And if my ATM machine starts moving around, I'm definitely worried, right? So, yeah, there is this whole spectrum of IoT, and we want to make sure that we're able to serve all parts of the spectrum. There certainly isn't one size fits all in IoT. It's really about being able to contextualize what we do to have the right solution, the right technology, and the right platform capabilities for different types of customers and solutions. And so to give you a little bit of an example of two customers that we have on the platform and what it means, these different ends of the spectrum. So we have a customer on the left-hand side. It's an insurance telematics solution. So you're probably familiar with the black box that can go inside particularly young drivers' cars. And it's giving them information about the driver behavior and what your kid's been up to in the car, but more importantly for the insurance. And so as a relatively less sophisticated device in terms of the IT around it, they are interested in the zero-touch deployment aspects to make sure that those devices can get out there without manual effort, making sure it's working exactly the way it should at the right time. They're interested in having the tools to be able to fault find any connectivity issues should they occur. And they're also interested in making sure that they have some basic automation to control their costs. So, one of the things is that the usage may not be entirely predictable. It depends how often someone drives their car, and that might not be uniform. So having automation to be able to make sure that their commercial packages are aligned with the usage then really helps their overall business case. But on the right-hand side, then we see a more complex solution. And one of the best examples we see of that is the connected cars. And the connected car OEMs, the equipment manufacturers, are the big brands that we all know today. But in a connected car, there's not just one type of connectivity. Really, in connected car, the manufacturers need to know about the telemetry from the vehicle, how is it performing. They also perhaps are offering safety and security services, e-call, these type of services to the end customers. And also with connected car, we see that it typically has a more complex life cycle. So, you could have the module being assembled in one place, having the SIM card embedded in it at that point, and then that module could come onto the factory production line where there's a degree of testing to make sure it's working with the head-end systems of the car. And finally, then the car will arrive at the dealer next, and the dealer might want to showcase some of the really clever connected functionality that is enabled there. So we could have some sort of a demo mode. And then when the consumer buys the vehicle, then we want to update the whole service so it's in full production mode. So we're managing a complex life cycle there, and we want to make that automated and scalable as much as we can. Also, we see the connected car companies using things like multi-party billing. Sometimes, they have other partners involved in the service. There could be some premium entertainment services or Wi-Fi services that there's a commercial agreement with another partner. So having that kind of complexity to manage the whole commercial partnerships is really important as well. And
I think that is interesting because the connected car use case that you were referring, it's more than a use case. A car becomes more than a vehicle, and it's more an ecosystem. So it's not just four wheels and few seats, but it becomes something much more complex and much more interesting at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is a really exciting area. And, cars are, like many versions of our outside life. We expect to do more and more of the things that we do in our home, in our vehicles, and have that convenience and access to information and, technology really to help us on our literal journey. So yeah, no, the cars are very interesting use cases for us, and of course the connected car companies are very interested in eSIM localization use cases as well. And my friend Goran, I know, is going to talk to us about that in a little while.
Yeah, it's a great introduction to my topic later,
without being a spoiler.
Yeah, no problem.
Fantastic. So I mean, a key point that you are mentioning, it's in fact, connectivity, it's key, it's basic for enabling IoT and M2M, but at the same time, there is so much more than just the connectivity. That would be just a gateway for the service part, which is also a complete universe that needs to be explored, and it's waiting to be explored.
No, exactly. And one of the things that we talk about is that we don't want to just enable connectivity. We want to give a rich set of features and capabilities that really help you accelerate your entire business. So there's multiple customers I've talked to over the years that they start off with the impression that what we're doing for them is helping them administer all of these SIM cards that are out there. Mm-hmm. And that's only scratching the surface. The really exciting part is about how can you take this information, get it into the right parts of your organization where it can really transform your business. I've met customers who were able to not have to drag their staff in and pay them overtime at the weekend because we were able to do things automatically and over the air. And there's multiple use cases where actually the enterprises using our service get competitive differentiators in their markets, and they're able to be more successful because of the capabilities that us as a combined team bring them.
Yeah, so one size definitely does not fit all the needs.
Entirely.
Which is a nice bridge for our next part, and in this journey, the next point. And now we'll just have a quick stop here. Please do not hesitate to place your questions on the chat part of our webinar, and we will gladly take those questions at the end of the session. So coming to your statement, one size does not fit all, and that's the reason of our strategic partnership around M2M connectivity and added value. It's not only the price, it's the value you bring to customers. It's the way you transform through technology and commercial propositions, how you transform business and how you transform lives. Today, really, we are really concentrated on M2M and IoT, but we could easily extrapolate this to businesses and to consumer markets. So post looking for the basics and the foundations that were created and enabled by technology, developed the 4 different packages, business packages, really to address and be flexible enough to address the different needs in the market. So I invite all of you to come in this journey with me. So let's concentrate on the first one, the light version. We have discussed, and Mark, you have light touch a little bit on the topic, the fact that we have devices that are a bit more static, as you were mentioning on the edge of your diagram. The demand is lower in terms of many things. So on one side, the specifications on a platform, but also in terms of business. So if we look and take really the example of a smart metering company, I'm not going to focus just on the water metering, but any kind of smart metering business, there are 3 main specs that are required by the customers. On one side, low data consumption, that's the reality. They're static, they send information from time to time. It's not critical to be exactly at noon. It could be at noon 5 minutes or 10 minutes. There is really not a huge demand in terms of bandwidth, and there is really not a big demand in terms of data because the complexity, as you have mentioned, it's simply not there. The second part is it's the scale part of the business. So the number of static devices, and Goran, you have stressed that during Mark's presentation, is also very important, which will then lead us to the zero touch SIM provisioning, which is extremely important if you want to manage efficiently your business. And last but not the least, the low power consumption. So typically, those are devices that are not heavy in terms of power consumption. So the way it needs to be addressed and the way we need to look to this type of business and use cases is really providing low bandwidth solution. So that's one thing. Because the devices are static, well, one zone would be more than sufficient. So you are not really over dimensioning or not trying to kill birds with a cannon, but really trying to address the need of the customer and the zero touch SIM provisioning that we have slightly touch base on, on the side of simplicity and ensuring that we start going, even in the foundation, in the early steps of the business, into something that works, and it works in an efficient manner. So our next stop will be the next step in terms of demand. So if, again, using your slide, Mark, from the left side in terms of complexity and in terms of demand, we are coming from a foundation and slowly towards to more complex use cases. So the essential, it's when more is needed. When the basics are no longer sufficient to cover what the market is really demanding. So classical case, an alarm system where we have a significant amount of devices being deployed a bit everywhere, not really limited to Luxembourg or to France or Germany or a specific country, but it's really being dispatched all over Europe, for example. The data consumption here, it's a bit more important. It's really a bit more consequent than just few megabytes. It really depends, and I think a key aspect on your presentation is really the three pillars on IoT and M2M, the device on its own, the connectivity, but then the solution, which can then unleash always great opportunities for business and transforming the business all around the world. So here we have stabilized the consumption. We know the solution, how it works, what it is expected to pass on to then, Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud or whatsoever, and there are no really high volume fluctuation. So the fact that it's predictable, but also at a higher level, means that you need to be in control to ensure that if something goes wrong, well, you can control and you can address it timely. And last but not the least, this type of use case requires additional services, SMS and voice. An SMS, for example, notifying the user that, well, your front door is open at 3 a.m., you are not at home, probably there's something wrong going on, or potentially voice services, establishing a call to the central of the Guardian
to the application.
Company. Yes, the application. Exactly. So
not
here,
to the human.
Exactly. So here, and it's a good point. We are not talking about the traditional telephony that, as we can see, contacting two smartphones. We are really at a different level of service. So when we have such use case, such demand, the way we are addressing it, it's really enabling multi-zoning, which was not the case for Light. Different demand, different use case needs to be addressed with a different solution. The EMEI whitelisting, ensuring that in terms of fraud, things are a bit more under control. It will avoid the device swapping because the amount of volume and the price associated to that volume is different than CC Lite. So it becomes more important in this type of use case. The fact that you need to enable and ensure that is part of the basic for this type of offering, SMS and voice traffic. It's important to be there. It's part of the core. And last but not least, as I have mentioned, the alerting. At least have a visibility on what's going on and how things are evolving. It might be an overconsumption because of an anomaly, and you want to address it properly and timely. So continuing our journey, our next stop would be the advantage. So we spoke about foundation. We spoke about we need more than the foundation. So the advantage is really the jump or the bridge between the local, what it is very well located, very well known, coming to uncertain waters. So that's why we have a jump between local or moving from local to global. So when we look to the logistics space, just for a moment, it's typically what happens. You might have trucks crossing Europe every day, from west to east and east to west, north to south and south to north. And we know already that here we are really in a use case where mobility is key. We are looking to devices that are in constant movement and are providing information in a constant manner. So it's important then to understand the location, to understand where those devices are. In logistics, time is money, like in many other businesses.
Of course.
And especially logistics when it comes to, supplying to supermarkets and specific goods that needs to be transported in a very specific and rigorous manner, the amount of information that will be associated once again to the application and to the solutions will be completely different. The pattern, the behavior of such devices and such solutions will demand a different approach and a different view. In some cases, logistics will be only confined or limited to geolocation, and some other times will be about temperature, about speed, about it really can be a complete separate universe. And last but not the least, which is linked to this consumption and to this behavior, is the fact that you need to be able to address those different consumptions, avoiding bill shock, avoiding surprises at the end of the month. So the key takeaways on such use case, on such demand, would be the multi-zoning. So we are opening different zones and, without restricting business to roam all around the world. That's, I think, quite important. The second part, in this specific use case, the logistics track and trace, the location-based services feature. You know where your devices are, you can control, you are empowered, and I think it's a key word that we will hear probably a bit later as well with Goran, and the automation rules. If you have your devices that are spread and all over the world, you don't want to, as you have mentioned, you don't want to start shipping people or shipping new devices because something goes wrong. You want to automate. You want to be more efficient. You want to ensure that you have a global scale business, but you are capable to manage it remotely in a very efficient manner. And that comes to the device on its own, but also in terms of pricing and commercials behind it.
Absolutely.
So the last stop, at least from my side, on the proposition would be the Advantage Plus. The Advantage Plus is all-inclusive. So it's not only about features, it's really about the complexity. And funny enough, we are talking about connected cars, and we already spent a few minutes discussing about connected cars as an ecosystem on its own. So what is so special about connected cars use case linked to Advantage Plus? So first of all, it's global deployment. You are a car producer, you create new models. It will be deployed in the US, but probably as well in Gabon or in France or all over Europe and in Asia. So the demand of being reachable anywhere, anytime, it's foundation. So we don't start any longer just about, well, this is connectivity, it's a pipe, it works, and that's it. The second thing, it's the high data usage, which is more than the high data. It's really the big magnitude between the different use cases that you can find in a car. It could be just the information on the car, but it could be, as you have mentioned, Mark, infotainment, the maps being downloaded, the fact that you have third-party partners or third-party providers coming into this ecosystem where it needs to interact with the final user. It really creates a big amplitude in terms of data usage. And it's a very interesting use case as an ecosystem and as a way to position the market on the automotive industry. Last but not the least, the need for automation. Here, it's definitely mandatory. You have cars, millions of cars deployed everywhere in the world. You want to be in control, but you want to do it in a way that is completely transparent, almost for you. You have the visibility, but you are capable to have some actions automated while keeping in control. So among the full all-you-can-eat approach, two main features that I think are important for someone in this space. So on one side, it's the automation, of course, that rings the bell. It's the buzzword. We need to address it first. It's about the rate plan. So the bill shock. I don't want to have a bill shock. I don't want to have a surprise at the end of the day, and that is based on location, different timings, different zones, different behaviors, different costs, and we need to be able to assess and give that confidence to the market that costs are under control. And at the same time, we were talking about control and transparency. So the Cisco analytics really gives that transparency, so customers can look at it from the perspective that, yes, I'm in control. Things are going as expected. Probably I need to do something because the behavior is changing and the pattern is changing.
We have some really cool stuff there these days as well. So we have something called proactive IoT, and one of the key parts of that is called anomaly detection, and that's where we can use machine learning to study how your devices have been behaving over the last few months, and we can predict how they should be behaving, and then so when something starts to look unusual, then we're able to flag that up to you guys as a service provider and to the enterprise. And because part of the thing is that often when you're deploying at scale, then some of your devices could get lost in the noise. And so it's very easy to see the very top end of a chart, which devices are using the most service or moving around the most or connecting, so we can see the extremes, but the machine learning really allows us to discover these little batches of devices that might not be behaving in the way that they should and make sure that there can be intervention before it starts to cause a business problem. And we're doing quite a lot in this area moving forward.
So yeah. It's definitely moving from a reactive mode to a proactive moding, which ultimately means we'll be closer to the customer reality, irrespective of a commercial proposal or even irrespective of the product. It's really about the value that is being created.
Exactly, and part of the philosophy here is that we don't expect our enterprise customers to be experts in mobile connectivity. They make the best coffee, they make the best cars. They are specialists in their part of the business. And so if we can take as much intelligence on the whole connectivity side and present that in actionable ways to the enterprise, then that's adding much more value. We don't expect them to be able to, or to have to become experts in the mobile space.
Yeah, to my understanding, you have a set of tools that you can use for data analytics, reporting, troubleshooting, different kind of action that a customer can use in the system, and it's there available, and I don't think it's so complicated.
It's about really empowering customer to use things, but it's a little bit the art of hiding the complexity that IoT brings, and we know because we work with this every day, not only from a technology point of view, but also from a demand management point of view, from the industry, from the market, from the customers, which ultimately are the reason why we are so passionate about this.
No, exactly, and I think that the last point about this is that we don't believe in technology for technology's sake. It's really about, what business problem is the customer trying to solve? Are we giving them the right set of tools to be able to solve that problem? Are we helping them with their key metrics about end user satisfaction, about critical devices being up and working when they are? And so everything has to boil down to the reality of the business case and providing that best possible service out there.
One size does not fit all, but flexibility does. And the last point, which is the cherry on top of the cake, is for those most demanding customers, we can even provide a different tool for a deeper insight and performance on the fleet. What is really happening and how it's happening, and is that a problem? Is that something I should be concerned? Or yes, I'm in full control, everything goes as planned, and things are working as expected. So that would have been the last stop in this journey. I will then pass to exciting news to Goran, everything around the eSIM. Before I give you the floor, Goran, I just remind all of you, please place your questions on the chat box, and we will try to address them at the end of our session. Goran, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. So my background is technical. I'm coming from technology. I've been working for many years, and my first association to the IoT, it comes, of course, in the 5G domain and narrowband IoT. But I'll talk about eSIM, which is nicely introduced actually by Mark before, which is for me equally important. I'll try through this presentation to explain why it is important. Okay, this one doesn't work. The next.
I think we are facing just small technical issues, but probably you can start introducing the subject.
Yeah. Okay, so sorry for this.
No, but you have to have the obligatory technical pitch, right? That I think
it's very good for it.
Yeah, no, but we've all met customers a lot. We've all done events, and without one little technical hitch or at the start of your video call, then it wouldn't be a proper.
We were just talking about flexibility that fits all sizes.
Yes. So I should not talk about technology too much. So let's then start from the basics. SIM card. So everybody knows actually what SIM card is, and everybody who is using in the device. So I would like to go back in the time, and SIM card is what we know. It's a plastic piece of equipment at the size of it was at the time size of the credit card, with electrical contacts on it, and we use it in the device to actually make the device working with the network. So all the time that the SIM card has changed in the form factor due to the fact that devices were getting smaller and smaller, and the demand was there to have them also smaller in size. So around '96 we have seen mini SIM, then later on we have introduction of micro SIM, then nano SIM. All these SIM cards are different cuts, in fact, needed to fit in the device, and it was more driven from the consumer market. Then around 2016, so it's not so long ago, but still it is quite long ago, we have introduction of the eSIM. So I will talk about this more later, but as you can see, the eSIM card is actually also driven for the form factor, so there is a demand to be even smaller, more robust. But the tendency is even further going into direction of minimizing the SIM card down to the what we call iSIM. It's actually integrated SIM in the chip of the device. So over the time, it may even disappear in terms of physical form factor. So what is actually SIM? So subscriber identity module, or subscriber identification module. So it's the same, it's the acronym. In fact, so we are talking about an application which is running on the hardware platform, which is called Universal Integrated Circuit Card. That's behind this electrical context. There is a chip, there is a memory, random access memory, read-only memory, which is used to actually facilitate application, which is SIM. We have also USIM. I will not now confuse too much on this, but actually, so we essentially talking about the application which is essential for authenticating the user. So by with this module, we have network authenticating the customer and to use this, to be able to use his subscription. So these different form factors that you see on the screen, we name them 1FF, 2FF, 3FF. This is technical word. Then you have something which is called MFF. M actually stands for the machine-to-machine form factor. It is invented for the machine, but actually it is used also in consumer devices, so not only in the machine. So ironically, it's called machine form factor, but it's actually used across the whole spectrum of devices. Now speaking about eSIM, so eSIM we refer to the SIM card which is embedded. It is a SIM card that is installed on the device. This small chip of size of 5 millimeter times 6 millimeter and 1 millimeter thick is it's the chip that is embedded on the device. It's soldered on the device, and that's what we call it embedded. Beside this need to have a different form factor, there is a technology behind which is equally important which we call as a remote SIM provisioning. As the device is having this SIM which is embedded, we need the technologies to support this eSIM card to be able to have it functioning in the network.
You have spoke about a little bit of the history of SIM card, and you reassured us that at least the older versions or the classic and standard SIM cards, they keep the same features somehow. Why do we need eSIM on this context for M2M?
Okay, so first of all, for the machine-to-machine and IoT, we also have the all other form factors that will be used. And we have also what we call industry SIM, which is also enforced SIM card, which is withstanding a lot of environmental changes, like changes of temperature, or humidity, or the dust. So actually the SIM card, which is now produced in this small form factor, is even more capable of resisting these environmental changes. And it is what is required for the machine-to-machine devices. But essentially technology behind, so which we have authentication, it is there, always there, it is present, and technology is actually evolving. So security is a very important factor for SIM card. And remote SIM provision is there to be able to communicate with the SIM card. So let me explain this further. So what is now, if we break down, I talked a little bit with eSIM, we have the hardware, okay, we have the application or software running, and then we have what we call the SIM profile. So when you look back into the standard SIM card, actually one SIM card will contain what we call one SIM profile. This SIM profile is a set of data that is which is, for example, IMSI, it is International Mobile Subscriber Identity. It's a unique number that is stored in SIM card to identify the user. We have other elements in this SIM profile. I will not go too much in details, but basically, difference here is that with eSIM, we have multiple profiles inside of the SIM. So now, speaking about eSIM, some from the industry will refer to the eSIM to the technology of being able to have multiple SIM cards within the eSIM. So, so what is important to understand is that the eSIM capabilities of having multiple profiles, it gives a lot of flexibility to the IoT and M2M industry.
And here, I'm sorry to interrupt you, here we are talking about different profiles, right, that can be stored in the same piece of hardware. Yes. Is there any limitation in terms of the number of profiles that can be stored?
So I've not seen any limitation I mean, specifications are not talking about limitations that are there, but I would say that there is a limitation in terms of memory of the SIM card, so there's certainly physical space that that is used for each profile. Okay. And maybe devices itself can have certain limitation. I mean, devices that are using the eSIM can have limitation in terms of number of eSIM profiles that can be managed with the device. But specifications are not really limiting the number of profiles that will be stored. There is one profile which is inside of SIM, which we call either bootstrap profile or initialization profile or localization profile. So this profile is installed at the time of production, and it is there to be able to provision all other profiles over the air. Okay. So for being able, so I didn't say that it's actually important is that technology which is needed for managing the profiles is called remote SIM provision. I will talk about this a little bit later. But now to touch base on why do we actually need eSIM. So yes, we have spoken about this small SIM and what is it important, what is needed, why is it there. So beside that, I spoke that it's small, it's robust, so it is it can withstand changes in the environment. Also, it is for devices that you mentioned before that low power consumption. It's also important. So devices that are small or needing, let's say, very low power consumption, the SIM card is there to enable this. But that is one aspect. So we spoke about multiple profiles. So with eSIM, we have actually a feature that is avoiding the MNO lock-in. So now I'm coming from the mobile telco, and I'm talking about avoiding MNO lock-in. First, let me explain what I mean by MNO lock-in in the context of the IoT and M2M. Sure. So when you have the SIM card installed on the device, they are in the fields and maybe in thousands, and if you need to change the subscriptions, change the MNO, then you have difficulties, in fact, to go and in the field and then get these devices and replace the SIM card. I mean, physical SIM card, which is replaceable. Now, this is very costly or very complex to do, and for that reason, you may say you're kind of MNO lock-in. Now, eSIM actually enables to have provisioning over the air of the new profile, and as such, you don't have to go in the field or take these devices back, but you can change your MNO by provisioning the new profile. Our idea as a MNO is to have to enable our customers, and I'm trying to embrace the technology here to enable customers having the devices that can have a lifespan of 15 years. And I think the SIM card will probably not fail, but maybe the device itself will fail over the time, or battery or something else, but SIM card will not fail, and device will function. It can have a long lifespan and resist different environment requirements. So as such, our customers can be confident using this technology to
so it's really the worry-free to manage the business.
Yes.
That comes as well to the device, saying, well, if the foundation is there, I can really focus on the value added on the service and connectivity. Yes. Because I know that the foundation will be there and will be there not only for 2 or 3 years, it will continue evolving. Just one question probably towards you, Mark. Do you see, as a global leader and having a view on the industry, that eSIM is really taking off on IoT? You see it, and you see it being driven by new technologies, new demands, or it is really just a natural evolution that is driving this growth in terms of eSIM, if any? What's your view on this?
I think it's taken a little bit of time to get there, frankly. You know, I think in the early days, some of the complexity around the eSIM kind of made things go a little bit slowly to start off with. But I think as the technology has matured, then yeah, we definitely see those use cases out there. And so, you know, what Goran was just describing was the insurance use case, where, you know, you've got an asset that you expect to deploy for a pretty long time, you know, 10, 15 years can be common in many cases. You know, you expect a connected car to be working for at least 10 years, an electricity meter 15 years, quite commonly. And so while you guys are providing, you know, the absolute best service and partnership for your customers today, and they expect that to continue, then no one has a crystal ball and can see the future. So it's all about, you know, having the reassurance for their business that they've still got the right solution in 10 years' time. Because as Goran said, the golden rule of managing IoT at scale is avoiding a truck roll. You know, customers tell us it can cost $200 or $300 to visit a device to swap it.
And Mark, you mentioned before, you talk about the industry, the car especially, car industry. So this is a very good introduction for my next point, I would say, because the eSIM is actually there to facilitate the production say of the complete manufacturing process. Basically, you can introduce your eSIM card in the manufacturing plant or car, and then you will have to distribute the device across different countries. Then how do you going to have different SIM cards? You know, you can here have remote provisioning, and then enable the different kind of profiles in different countries. So this is you can basically utilize the technology for this kind of use case. Then what we have, you can source instead of sourcing different, you know, SIM cards from different MNOs, you can have one SIM card, and then you have different MNOs that you can source. So you can then have a simplification of sourcing your connectivity. And
because of the connected cards and because of the different profiles, you know, ideas start coming. So if let's just consider going to the edge of the continent of Europe. So you might be in, you know, really in Eastern Europe with an eSIM and with a profile belonging to a customer. So you avoid, you know, all the roaming costs, or you have a cost that is very well regulated, and then you just pass the border and how does it really work? Does it switch automatically to a new profile? Can you manage, well, voice is cheaper here, so I can use the e-call or infotainment based on SMS because it's cheaper with this profile, but I keep data on my old profile. How does it work?
Okay, so the SIM card that is holding multiple profiles, the eSIM that we speak of, indeed has multiple profiles, but only one profile can work at a time. Okay. The specification is done in a way that you activate one of these profiles which will be active for your for consumption. Now there could be some specific use cases which require kind of change of the profile. I would say that this is not specified by the GSM, by the specification. It's not focusing on this kind of this kind of use case, but I think with some additional features and functions on the SIM card, it could be possible to have functions that can change the profiles. Means like it will require some additional applet or functionalities additional. So it will be customization, I would say. Okay. But essentially, the SIM card, eSIM is having one profile working at a time, and you cannot actually have a voice from one profile and data from another profile. That's not.
There might be mechanisms, but per definition, bottom line, it's one profile, well, several profiles stored, but one profile active at a time.
Yes.
Okay.
But when I look at my last point, that you can have a global reach with the eSIM, which means that if you can source multiple profiles in the SIM card, and you can actually come to us as a partner, we can enable this different MNO profiles and have a global reach. So you can have different profiles in different regions or countries, right. And that you can achieve with the eSIM.
Okay.
So now I like to just a little bit touch the point. I will not go too much in detail because we don't have so much time left about remote subscription provisioning. It's a very important topic when you talk about eSIM because eSIM needs this technology. So what we're actually speaking of is so what is a remote subscription provision? Is the platform that is enabled to remotely provision, enable, disable, delete these profiles. So as such, as an operator or as customer, you can, through this platform, deploy your SIM profiles, starting maybe first in the manufacturing plant and then afterwards maybe in the field. So it is an enabler to actually communicate with SIM card. And here we have actually, just want to mention that we have two different types of remote SIM provisioning due to the fact that we have different type of usage. So if you talk about a consumer device, we have a customer who is using the device and he's in control. So he has to initiate the request to get this profile of the new profile on the device. On the SIM, eSIM, if the device is having eSIM integrated inside. Here on the M2M, we have actually different model because here we have nobody there to actually request for the profile, but it's actually reversely there is a so platform is actually pushing the profile to the SIM. So the initialization process is different and control is different, and as such there is two different specifications actually for consumer market and for the M2M market. We as an operators, we need to support both type of platforms. And for M2M, I would say that actually the idea about the eSIM started initially from the M2M, so machine. This is why we have MFF2. So it started from the M2M and IoT industry. The focus was coming from there, and the first specification started around 2013 about the deployment of the M2M. But then it was taken off, embraced by the consumer market, and I think it was more and more, we see it in the new devices. So you have the iPhone, for example, correct, which can have it has an SIM, but also a standard slot as well as the eSIM, and you can as such have two subscriptions on the iPhone.
It's more ecologic and it's easier to manage yes, overall. Yeah.
And now a little bit about how the business process. This is just simple, I would say. One of the use cases that I could talk about now because we don't have time. But starting just from the basics, so what we have is actually, as we mentioned, it's the hardware element that we need to produce. So device vendors can source the eSIM from, it doesn't have to be sourced from the POS, but POS can also produce with a partner, produce and ship the eSIM to the device manufacturer and to be embedded on the device. So either it's optional, but you can have eSIM from POS. It's available already, so we can ship them to the devices and to device manufacturers to be installed on devices. On the side, we have a platform which is there for remote provisioning, and the profiles which needs to be then pushed to the device will be using this remote SIM provisioning platform. Of course, if the eSIM is sourced from another, say, place, then we will have actually already something that is in the field, and POS profiles will be then installed on the device remotely, pushed to the device for enabling the connectivity.
Will that platform be supplier agnostic? We know that there are several SIM suppliers in the market. Will be possible then to reuse different suppliers with the same platform, or it will require adaptation for customers?
I spoke before about the specifications. I didn't go too much in details, but GSMA is actually making the specification with the idea to have the compatibility.
Yes.
I cannot say that everything is compatible 100%, but the idea is to have compatibility, which means that any SIM card can be provisioned with remote SIM provisions. That there should not be limitation in that aspect.
Okay.
On the top side, you see actually still control center. This is another component of our ecosystem, which is, we spoke about this before. So our customer is using then a control center still as to be able to manage the connectivity. So this is actually, let's say, one slide where I could actually put a simple part of the business process. But I think there are other opportunities, and we may speak about this in some other forum in maybe next time. Yes. There are other opportunities and possibilities to extend these use cases towards the wholesale type of business, and which I don't have too much time now to speak of. So for the moment, I will stop now. Yep. And thank you for the...
You're most welcome, Goran. And indeed, eSIM, it's an ecosystem and it's a universe that is definitely worth to explore on a dedicated session, a dedicated Thursday forum. Thank you so much for your presence and for your contribution. So right now, I will pass probably in review the questions, potential questions that we might have received from the audience. Just while the questions are loading, I have one question for you, Mark. When we look to your spectrum, you know, I have seen two big bubbles. One on the right on automated cards, and one on the left on smart metering. How you see it from an industry point of view? Are we really going to the extremes, leaving the mid part of that spectrum a little bit, you know, struggling, either going up or going down? Or it's just a trend at this moment in time, but you still have a stable mid layer that is capable to, you know, still generate a lot of value. What's your takeaway on that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think the entire spectrum exists, and it's easy to talk about either end of it because it helps demonstrate helps demonstrate the two extremes, so you can get a better sense of the spectrum. But in fact, even the bubbles aren't in one place in the spectrum because different customers in different spaces do things slightly differently. So it really is about one size doesn't fit all. So for instance, even smart metering customers, while they are static assets, but we still see that sometimes they can have quite sophisticated IT integration requirements. And so, yeah, I think everyone is a little bit different.
Okay, I can see, thank you for that, Mark. I can see that there is a lot of participation, which I already thanked to the audience. So there is a first one from the audience saying, I have two questions about Cisco Jasper. Why it is not possible to get session usage data via REST API? So probably
actually,
Mark.
I think it is, and there's a number of different parts of the session information. So we do have some API calls that are related to that. So I'd be really glad to follow up in detail with the specific use case and the particular APIs that would be useful to Julian.
So basically, there is already the definition to have this kind of information present on the API definition for control center.
Yeah.
And the second question is why is it possible to pull customer data for each customer ID via the REST API, but you don't have an endpoint to get all customer IDs? There is a logic error here.
Okay. So, yeah, this is a very particular use case, but here, this is about, we have a hierarchy in the platform, and so we typically call the people who have a contractual relationship with Post, they're called accounts, and then your accounts then can manage their end customers as well. We have an entity called customers. And so this topic has come up a couple of times recently. And so, yeah, we are actually actively looking at more ways to interrogate that customer ID and do things to help our enterprises really automate that kind of third level of the hierarchy. So again, I think we could have quite an interesting conversation with Julian and be able to help him with some of his particular use cases.
Yeah, probably it's a question, which is a really good question, to see, to address offline, and of course I will have our colleagues on the back end providing then all the details, and of course we will have a dedicated session probably with this. I've seen as well passing some questions about eSIM and that part, so I would like to pick one of them about which EUICC version are you talking about here? According to my knowledge, EUICC 3.2 only allows one IMSI profile per SIM. Goran, probably you would be best placed to answer this question.
Well, at Post currently we have actually eSIM, which is capable of hosting multiple profiles. But I have to mention that the remote SIM provision is something we have not yet live. So it is something that we're working on. And I am not sure why. I mean, the question is about a specific SIM card. I don't know if it's a Post SIM card or if it's some other. But our aim is to have the SIM card which will be able and capable of hosting of multiple SIM profiles. Now, I've seen also another. Do you have the SGP 3132 available today? No, we don't have. Just want to say that I'm not a specialist of and I don't know every single specification. That you will not. I know there is. First of all, there is specification that is for the consumer market. There is a specification which is for the M2M market. There is a third specification which is coming up and actually very recently being published. And I think we're referring here to this one, is that actually we have, I talked about that actually consumer market was taking off and the M2M market was not so taking off. The problem was actually that technology is quite complex behind. And actually, and there is a tendency, there is an industry initiative to have a new specification to simplify this and actually focus on IoTs, in fact, going to these new specifications to simplify basically it will be kind of mixed, I would say, from consumer and the M2M market. So some good things about consumer was taken into the specification of M2M to simplify even further.
Correct. So it avoids really to have a completely silo between both words. I want to take another question, and still on the eSIM. Is it the right understanding that EUICC is just possible with MFF2 SIM cards?
No, okay. The EUICC. So it refers to the embedded universal integrated circuit card. universal integrated circuit card, as I mentioned before, is actually hardware platform that hosts the applications such as SIM or USIM. Now, the MFF2 card is actually, as I mentioned in my presentation, it is there with a specific need, but the remote SIM provisioning is available also for the standard type of standard MF, so 1FF, 2FF, 3FF cards. Therefore, as I mentioned before, sometimes in the industry they would refer to eSIM to the capabilities of having multiple profiles in the SIM, and not to the eSIM, but eSIM actually really means embedded,
yes.
Okay, embedded SIM. So when you speak about eSIM, I know that sometimes they're referring to the capabilities of multiple SIMs, so I accept that maybe when somebody says eSIM, actually refers to the this technology of having multiple SIM profiles.
Okay.
But they can be also running on the standard SIM.
On the standard
not
SIM.
only on the MFF2
which is
card.
about the profile management
Yes.
that can still run
Yes.
on a...
You can order the functionalities of multiple SIM on the standard SIM. So I'm not saying it's limited just to the
MFF2 SIM cards. I've seen one question which is quite interesting, and that would be probably on me, which is how do you see the future use of satellite backup comms in 5GR17 and moving forward? Well, not being really an expert on satellite communications, but trying to give really a step back on the usage of satellite communications or backup communications. I think we could stay here and discuss the topic for quite some time, but I think it is a very niche market. There might be interest, and there might be, and they are, specific use cases where satellite brings the added value that potentially mobile connectivity is not capable to address, at least not in a short period of time. So from that perspective, there is space to coexist the satellite connectivity with the mobile, and there will be even use cases where the combination is where the added value is it's brought to the game on the maritime space, on aeronautics, and so on. So the backup comms, yes, I see it as a recurring trend, but it will not be a massive trend in the market. I just came from the Mobile World Congress, and yeah, there were interesting use cases there on the satellite, but once again remains very limited in terms of application and remains still a very niche deployment all over the world. It does not exclude the fact that the mobile network or cellular connectivity will completely be replaced. It doesn't mean that one size fits all with cellular connectivity, but there will be specific use cases that one and the other will not be able to address, and therefore the way I see it, and I will take it as a personal comment, there is space for both use cases, and Absolutely. There will be things that can be addressed with that. We have overrun a little bit our time. I would like to thank once again both of you. Thank you, Goran, for all your expertise and insights around eSIM. I can already spoil a little bit that our next Thursday forum hosted by International Sales will be pretty much around all this exciting technology and ecosystem. And thank you, Mark, for bringing the market insights and the industry trends into this discussion. Really appreciate. Last but not the least, thank you so much for our audience being present today, putting all those questions. We'll be more than glad to tackle some of the questions that we were not able to answer at this moment in time due to time constraints. Please address them to me directly, and we will definitely have dedicated sessions, if necessary, calls to address all of this. So by now, thank you so much. Have a great day and a great rest of the week.
Thank you.